Manila. It's forecast to move west-northwest at around 28 kilometres per hour across the northern part of Luzon. The weather forecast for today, sunny periods. There will be 1 or 2 showers later. Maximum temperature will be 31 degrees. Moderate fresh to northeasterly winds, occasionally strong offshore later, and there'll be swells later. The outlook, frequent heavy rain with squalls tomorrow. Have a good day. Now the news read by Samantha Butler.
The two Youngspiration legislators-elect say they'll write to the Legco President Andrew Leung, asking for another chance to be sworn into the council next Wednesday. The two, along with Democracy Groundwork's Lau Siu Lai, missed their chance to retake their oaths of office after pro-establishment lawmakers walked out of yesterday's Legco meeting. They want the two to apologise for last week's oath-taking when they used a derogatory pronunciation of the word China. Political analyst Chung Kim-wah from Polytechnic University expects more stalling adjournments ahead until the hearing of a judicial review sought by the government to strip them of their seats.
It's the government determination to kick them out from the Legco and to prevent them from taking the oath. If there's no other option in the coming week, I believe that another adjournment of meeting is quite possible, so that it would leave the government and the Legco to wait for the ruling from the court on November 3rd to see what the court is going to grant the government to do on these two members.
The observatory says it'll issue the standby signal number 1 sometime this morning as severe Typhoon Haima gets closer to Hong Kong. It slammed into the northeastern coast of the Philippines shortly before midnight with sustained winds of 225 kilometres per hour. Here's Olivia Lee from the observatory.
According to the present forecast track, Haima will edge closer to the coast of Guangdong tomorrow and may skirt within 100 kilometers of Hong Kong, thereby posing a threat to the territory. We expect the weather to deteriorate significantly tomorrow. There will be frequent squalls and also heavy rain.
The United States presidential candidates Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton will go head-to-head shortly in the third and final debate in Las Vegas. Here's Radio Australia's Stephanie March.
With only 3 weeks to go until Election Day, Donald Trump is running out of time to turn his campaign around, as polls show Hillary Clinton leading nationally and in almost every key battleground state. Ahead of the debate, Mr Trump has continued to raise concerns that the election will be rigged in his opponent's favour. The third and final debate will be moderated by Fox News anchor Chris Wallace and will include questions about immigration, foreign policy and fitness for office.
Scientists at the European Space Agency are still waiting to find out if they've successfully landed a small robot on the surface of Mars. Experts lost contact with the probe on its way down. There was celebration at the mission control in Germany, though, when it became clear that the spacecraft which deployed the lander had successfully gone into orbit around Mars. You're listening to the news on RTHK.
Good morning and welcome to Backchat. I'm Jim Gould.
And I'm Hugh Chiverton with a cold.
We're talking today about the extraordinary developments in the Legislative Council this week. The Chief Executive is taking the President of the Council to court, and the pro-establishment lawmakers are blocking the swearing-in of 2 new legislators-elect. It's a strange reversal of the usual roles. So what does it say about current relations between the administration and the legislature, and within Legco between the different camps? Are the Youngspiration lawmakers getting what they deserve? Are pro-establishment people threatening the establishment? Is one side more hypocritical than the other, or is the whole business just descending into a farce? What are the possible ways out, and what are the prices to pay in each scenario? Email us with your thoughts. Our email address is backchat@rthk.hk. That's backchat@rthk.hk. Or go to our Facebook page at Backchat on RTHK Radio 3 and leave a comment there. Or you can give us a call on 23388 266. After 9:20, we'll be talking about the care home sexual assault case. Well, joining us this morning for our main subject, we have Civic Party legislator Tanya Chan.
Good morning.
Good morning, legislator and Vice Chairman of the DAB, Holden Chow. Lawrence Ma, barrister and Chairman of the China-Australia Legal Exchange Foundation. And later on, we'll be hearing from James To, Democratic Party legislator, and Albert Chen, Professor of the Faculty of Law of the University of Hong Kong. Good morning to you all.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Tanya Chan, maybe we could start with you. This is kind of ironic, isn't it, that this weapon, which has been used so often by pan-democrats, is now being used against you?
Well, yes, but actually, if you can recall that about 2 years ago, regarding our constitutional reform, the pro-establishment legislators had tried to use the same tactic in order to wait for Mr. Lau, the the former legislators, to join and vote for the constitutional reform. And this time, they used it very successfully by stopping two young inspiration legislators to retake their oath in legislature.
And what would you say to the pro-establishment people who've done this?
Well, of course, we are very disappointed by Direct. In fact, we condemn Direct by stopping these two legislators to fulfill their constitutional duty, and the retake of oath is highly recommended, and also allowed by the highly recommended by the legal advisor that retained by the by the president, and also the president made a decision that he would allow these two legislators if they request to do so. So they have made their request on Tuesday afternoon, but thereafter they received a writ from DOJ, and the whole action is designed by C.Y. Leung. So this is very disappointing, and we can see very clearly that the administration, especially led by C.Y., actually is interfering in the affairs of legislature.
The point would be that they had a chance to do it, and they decided not to do it properly.
Well, of course, but at the same time, of course, it's their decision. As all the legislators of the Civic Party did...
well, they have to live with the consequences of that decision. They had their opportunity, they decided not to do it, and consequences follow.
Well, that's the decision. But at the same time, we can see that for example, like 4 years ago, Mr. Wong Yuk-man also has a chance to do a second time at the second, in that council meeting again. And this is decided by the president, and Wong Yuk-man has written his letter and made a request. So he did it smoothly the second time.
But Tanya Chan, in terms of the walkout by the pro-establishment camp, is it not a bit rich of the pro-democracy camp to criticise that, since using quorum calls and what have you has been a regular tactic of the pro-democracy side? Hello? Hello? Tanya Chan. Okay. Sorry, who have we got? Is that Lawrence Ma?
Yeah, hi.
Mr. Ma, hello. What do you make of the proceedings this week?
I've made comments about people's been talking about whether it breaches the separation of powers, but I would have thought that if you read the basic law carefully, you would understand that the chief executive in this occasion is acting as the head of the region, but not head of the executive government. The head of the region has a function and power above the three branches of government. If you care to read, it will be Article 43 to 58 of the Basic Law. The Basic Law confers on the chief executive a specific duty and power. Those powers are similar to the prerogative powers previously exercised by the Crown or the governor of the colonial era. Those powers permeate into the three different branches. For example, appointment of judges. I mean, the judiciary branch would not be able to appoint judges for themselves. You need to have the governor in the old days to appoint them. So in this regard, the chief executive, as head of the region, has a power permeates into the executive branch. Now, for example, also the legislative branch, they cannot dissolve themselves. I mean, in other countries we have double dissolutions, for example, dissolving the parliament. The power of dissolving the parliament itself doesn't rest with the parliament. It rests with a higher hierarchy, which in this case is the chief executive acting in the capacity of the head of the region to dissolve the government. So the chief executive's power permeates into three different branches of government. Now, in this case, I would have thought that he is wearing the hat as the chief executive of the region in exercising powers to deal with matters that arises in the executive council.
So you would support what he's doing in taking legal action?
I would have thought that he has enforced the law. He has not given them a chance because chances has been given before by the legislative, by the president of the Legislative Council, who has allowed votes to be retaken on various grounds. But it seems that he has, under the Article 43, answer to the accountable to the central government by taking a tougher stance this time.
Legal action, as you know, from the administration is usually taken by the Secretary of Justice. Why the Secretary of Justice and the Chief Executive himself, personally?
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's what I'm saying. If you read the basic law carefully, you understand that he himself alone has a duty to answer to the executive government, to the central government, and then he himself alone has, being the head of the region, has the
But what's exceptional about this case? If that's always the case, why isn't that always the case? Why aren't all suits in the name of the chief executive?
Sorry, I missed your point.
Why is this exceptional in that the chief executive himself is personally making this in this judicial review?
Oh, because it's only he has the power under the law to supervise three branches of government.
So the Secretary of Justice doesn't?
No, well, not under basic law, because it is
but it's in the name of the Secretary of Justice as well?
No, not as an executive branch of government. That the executive branch of government hasn't got the power to supervise the legislature.
Is that the case, or do they not? Does nobody actually know what's going on? Because why would it be for the Secretary of Justice and the Chief Executive
as parties to the application? You mean?
Yes.
That I would have thought that it should really be the chief executive as the head of region. Not the Secretary of Justice.
But it is the Secretary of Justice, I suppose.
It is the Secretary of Justice.
So you don't know any more than anyone else what's going on.
No.
In that respect.
Yeah.
What about the action of those legislators yesterday? What your comment on that?
Well, it seems that they've done their best to, or trying to do whatever they can to stop the two pro-independence legislators from getting into office. It's pretty political.
So you don't have any sort of comment from a legal standpoint?
Well, I think it's a political decision. People criticise that, and some people supported that. As you see, there are a number of supporters, a lot of supporters outside the council chambers yesterday in support of the motion of censoring them, or the action of the establishment legislators from walking out.
You're not concerned that they're basically stopping the proper operation of the Legislative Council?
Yeah, that's a concern, yes, when they vote to sit in chambers. But, I mean, they've been playing good boys for a number of years, and it seems this is the last resort of a tactic they have adopted to try to block the swearing in of the two young, what do they call them? The young...
Inspirations,
Legco members.
Hi, Tanya Chan, you still there?
Yes.
So what is your kind of a view of the behaviour of the two Youngspiration legislators elect? Do they deserve any support? Do they deserve the chance to take their oath again? Do they need to apologise? Do you think they need to apologise to China for insulting the nation as they did?
I don't see it. Of course, I don't agree with their way, with the manner they demonstrate or they represent last week as the legislators from the Civic Party make their oath solemnly last week, and you can see our stance very clearly. But at the same time, you can see now it's a matter of separation of powers, and it's a matter of dignity of the legislature and a matter of rule of law. I really can't understand the point made by Lawrence mentioning that the executive is the head of the region. So he takes this stance, or he takes this position, and so he filed his action against the president of the Legislative Council as well as the two young inspiration legislators. It's so clearly that we can see this is purely the power of the president to decide where. Well, I can't see any law in that refraining these two legislators or three legislators to make their oath again. And at the same time, it's very important to respect the decision of the president, though there is kind of opposition of the legality of Mr. Andrew Leung. But at the same time, since he's elected, we respect his power, his authority, and his position. And now you can see the legislator from the pro-establishment camp. It seems that they do not support the whole system, the election system, by simply walking out and stopping these two legislators who's duly and publicly elected by their supporters, by the voters, and they just try to stop them by walking out. And this is really a very disappointing situation. And of course, if you have any kind of unsatisfaction towards these two legislators, you can handle that in these 4 years, but not simply by walking out and stopping them to remake their oath or affirmations till the judgment from the judiciary. So if after, for example, like on the 3rd of November, if there is if the pro-establishment legislators do not satisfy with the results, and the government take it to a higher level of court, so they will just wait for the result of the Court of Appeal, and then the Court of Final Appeal, or what? So I really can't see the end of it. Or they would just want the central government to interpret the law, to intervene the Hong Kong judicial system and Hong Kong and again, and it is simply a destruction. And destroy one country, two systems. Okay,
well, also with us now is Holden Chow, from the legislator, from the DAB, vice chairman of the party as well. Good morning to you. Good morning, Holden.
Hello, good morning.
Hi,
hello.
Thank you much indeed for joining us. A few days ago, this idea, which originated with Paul Chair, of blocking the...
I'm sorry, can you just speak a bit louder? Because I'm sorry, I don't hear.
Okay, I'll do what I can.
Speak louder?
Okay,
Yeah.
A couple of days ago, you said you wouldn't do this. You turned down Paul Chair's idea of blocking the second attempt at swearing in, and now you've changed your mind. What happened? Why did you change your mind?
I didn't say I turned down. Well, I have to. Well, let me just clarify. I didn't say I turned down. I say we have to explore, and I say if we have formal discussion within the pro-establishment camp. On how we're going to carry out this walkout, and also in response to people's demand, then we would do it. So I didn't say I turned down the suggestion by Paul Chair. I always say we have to have thorough discussion. And let me just, I have to make my point clear. First of all, I would dismiss Ms. Chan's argument with due respect to her point of view. So first of all, I think the walkout is a difficult decision, but it's necessary because right now we did that in response to many people and many Hong Kong residents' demand. They are simply provoked by the insulting behavior done by Ms. Yao and Mr. Leung. And I think they do owe us a sincere apology before they are sworn in.
Okay,
now,
sorry, just to butt in quickly, apologies, but would an apology be enough if they do deliver a sincere apology? Would you then allow the swearing in to go ahead next week?
Well, I would say even if they provide us with a sincere apology, it's not only a decision of mine, it's always a decision of a sort of decision of a pro-establishment camp in deciding what to do next step. And we haven't come to any conclusion yet, or we haven't actually started a thorough discussion on that point. But I would say at least a sincere apology to everybody is necessary. I think I have to explain to the public that walkout is the last resort. But we all understand there is no choice. We have no choice but to do the walkout to stop them from taking the oath again. By simply just take the oath without showing any kind of remorse, that is not acceptable to Hong Kong people. And as you may see, the words they used last time while taking the oath in the legislature, the insulting words provoke many people, and this is not acceptable to us. So I think what we do is simply we don't think it's appropriate for them to do the sworn-in yesterday. And for next step, or what we would do, I think we have to have another round of discussion. And so we haven't come to any conclusion in our future action yet.
Tanya Chan?
Of course, you can see very clearly that Mr. Holden Chow actually explained that the whole saga, in fact, is a political gesture, and it's simply just trying to stop these two people, from taking their constitutional duty to. And
it's a very serious misconduct.
Let me finish it. Hold on. If you don't mind, do you mind if I try to finish my point? And in fact, they are abusing. It's apparently abusing the judicial system. It's together by the chief executive and the pro-establishment legislators abusing the judicial system, because the judicial system, the judge is going to give an answer, to give a judgment in November, but they still trying, and the judge refused to give an interim injunction on Tuesday night, but they still use this walkout and to stop these two to remake their oath before the president. And of course, I'm sure that both Lawrence and Holden understand that there is no law requesting a legislator to make an oath, to make an apology before making an oath. And this is simply a political censorship. And they can do it now, and then they can do it again.
Okay, Holden Chow?
Well, I have to respond. First of all, demanding an apology is never a legal requirement. It's a political action yesterday by doing the walkout. And I also have to respond to rebut her argument that I wouldn't come to any conclusion of the executive intervening the legislature by filing the judicial review or the injunction. Because if you look at the law on the oath and declaration ordinance, we are disputing on the section 21 whether the legislature...
Holden Chow, I think her point was rather that the actions of your camp are disrespecting. You're acting as a kangaroo court. You're disrespecting. No. Please, if you allow me to finish my point. Now, we would respect the court decision, but having said that, if you look at what happens right now, is there are a couple of legal issues to be tried or pending trial in a couple of weeks, including
how to enforce the Section 21, or on what condition does Section 21 apply, which talks about any legislative member neglect or decline to take the oath upon duly requested, and he could be disqualified. Now, we are talking about how to enforce and who would enforce the Section 21. Now, this legal issue, because it never happened before, so we need to know what actually the answer is. So to find out the answer, the most fair way is to seek the directions from the court. So I would say the legislature itself would be abide by law. So if it is abide by law, we need to clarify this legal issue. What we have to do is to seek directions from the court. So I wouldn't say today that the executive simply intervening the legislature. I wouldn't come to that conclusion, and I would wait and see until the judgment handed down by the justice. If there is any kind of intervention that would be mentioned in the judgment finally. So I wouldn't come to that type of conclusion right now. So this is my point of view.
But it was the decision of the Legco president, Andrew Leung, that these two Youngspiration legislators-elect could retake their oaths. So was the walkout not... by walking out, was that not disrespectful to the Legco president?
No, the court said, well, we haven't come to, even the court, to my understanding, they haven't come to a final conclusion as to whether the Legco president has the right to decide whether they are going to take the oath. They only said, well, let's let them and allow them to take the oath first, and I would allow the judicial review to go ahead, and the legal issue is still pending trial. So I have to make that very clear. Now, what I'm talking about is, even if the legislative council president, he has the right. If I agree that he has the right to allow them to take the oath, I would say, why would he exercise his discretion to allow them? Why would he just simply reject them? Because they have already done their sworn in. Last week, it's all completed. And if it's the discretion of the president of the Legislative Council, I would say he could simply just reject them and do not.
The trouble is, isn't it, Mr. Chow, that you're flying in the face of the judgment of the president of the Legislative Council, and he's supposed to be the boss. He's supposed to be the one, with the help of the Secretariat and the legal advice and so on, who lays down the rules. And you're saying now that these rules don't apply to you. And you're not only flying in the face of him, you're flying in the face of the tens of thousands of people who voted for these legislators, who are duly elected, as the president put it.
Well, but I would reiterate the point that even the legislature is abide by law. Now, what we are talking about, I would insist on the point that now we are disputing Section 21 of the Oath and Declaration Ordinance, whether it applies, on what condition it applies, and who would enforce the law. Now, this is still pending trial in a couple of weeks. And we wouldn't come to any conclusion until the final judgment handed down by the court. So on that point, I would say there's still a legal dispute there. But even if you read the legal advice given by the senior counsel instructed by the Secretariat, he also said he does not have any authority to support or negate on the point that whether the president of the Legislative Council indeed has the right to administer the oath again, given what happened last week. So he doesn't have any authority to support or negate that argument. He didn't come to any conclusion yet. So I would insist on the point that there's still a very serious serious legal issue pending trial in the coming judicial review in a couple of weeks' time.
Okay, thanks very much. We've got a break for the news. We'll be back in 3 minutes' time. But let's have a look at the weather before we go. And the standby signal number 1 is now in force. Today there's going to be sunny periods, 1 or 2 showers later. Top temperature about 31 degrees, so quite warm. Moderate to fresh north to northeasterly winds, occasionally strong offshore later. The outlook is a frequent heavy rain with squalls tomorrow. Seas will be rough with swells. Currently it's 26 degrees and the humidity is 87%.
Following its descent, it'll be the first European spacecraft on Mars to do so. You're listening to the news on RTHK.
And welcome back to Backchat, and we're talking this morning about the developments in the Legislative Council this week, with the Chief Executive taking the unprecedented step of taking the President of the Council to court, and the pro-establishment camp staging a walkout to block the swearing-in of 2 new localist legislators-elect. With us we have Lawrence Ma, barrister and chairman of the China-Australia Legal Exchange Foundation, and also Albert Chen, Professor of the Faculty of Law at the University of Hong Kong. But before we come back to you, just a few messages that we've received from listeners. TC says, while I had very low expectations of this term of Legco in regards to doing meaningful work, I had high expectations on the level of entertainment value it would provide to the public. That being said, I didn't expect such drama 2 weeks into the term. I'd also like to remind the public that during the Legco election last month, the pro-establishment camp ran on a platform against needlessly wasting time, such as filibustering and quorum calls. This campaign promise was broken 2 weeks into their terms. Someone needs to inform pro-establishment councillors how much luncheon meat could be bought with the public's money wasted due to the adjournment. That's a reference to the comment from one of the former pro-establishment camp that a lot of luncheon meat could have been bought with the money that was wasted in quorum calls and so on in the previous Legco term. TC goes on to say, a very important backstory lost in the theatrics is the legitimacy of Andrew Leung's presidency among pro-establishment councillors. Remember, the pro-establishment camp isn't always exactly a cohesive one, such as personal issues between the Liberal Party and the BPA. Their behaviour yesterday, intentionally or not, put Andrew Leung, the president, into a position in which he'll have to make unpopular decisions. That message from TC there.
And a couple more comments on our Facebook page. One from Stephen, who says, while Yao Wei-ching and Baguio Leung's attempts at making a point while taking their oaths was perhaps quite crude, since they weren't warned that they would only get one chance to get it right, and Raymond Wong got another chance to take his oath in 2012, it would be harsh, to say the least, to disqualify them from taking their seats. Henry says, linking all these events with the article by Song Jie, Commissioner of Foreign Ministry Foreign Ministry of China in the Asian Wall Street Journal on self-determination in Hong Kong is a non-issue. My impression is that the mainland is coordinating the scene against the pan out of actions by the anti-establishment camp. In a matter of this nature, common sense would tell us that the SAR and Liaison Office or Hong Kong Macau Office must have discussed their strategies and possible plans. That comes from Henry. Let's see. Umesh says, morning from smoggy Beijing. Are all these blame games on each other? Is that totally what one expects from a kindergarten class? It all started with the 2 kids with their stupid games during the first chance they had, or instead of jumping at getting in the system, they decided to play silly games and screwed it up. Now you have CY with his childish games of bringing on this writ, and the yes men from the government with their walkout. When will the granddads wake up? Your kids in Hong Kong are running amok. Fire all of them, including CY, and reboot the whole system, and hope it'll be better the next time round. Good heavy smog here in the capital is restricting the granddads' eyesight into seeing the farce going on downstairs. When will someone wake up and decide enough is enough of these silly games and get things moving. That comes from Umesh. Thank you very much indeed for those comments. Albert Chen, good morning to you.
Yes, good morning.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. What about, first of all, let's look at the case of the judicial review, which is launched in the name of the Chief Executive and the Secretary of Justice against the President of the Legislative Council. It's a very unusual situation. Do you see this as an overstepping of bounds, as an unwarranted interference by the executive branch on the legislature?
No, that's because this is not an ordinary judicial review case. This is a judicial review combined with an application by the Secretary for Justice under Section 73 of the Legislative Council Ordinance, which enables the government to challenge the qualification of a Legco member, arguing that a Legco member has been disqualified. So the litigation is mainly about whether these two particular Legco members have been disqualified because of what they did during the oath-taking process. The argument for disqualification is based on Section 21 of the Oaths and Declarations Ordinance, which, as we all know, says that when somebody who is required to take an oath declines or neglects to take it, then he or she will be disqualified from entering the office.
The point would be that this kind of judgment is usually up to the President of the Legislative Council.
Unfortunately, I don't think so. Under the Legco Rules of Procedure, the President of Legco does have the power to make determinations on the rules of procedure of Legco. But the present case is not mainly about the application of the rules of procedure. It is about how to interpret and apply the two sections which I've just mentioned, namely Section 21 of the Oaths and Declarations Ordinance and Section 73 of the Legislative Council Ordinance. So the Legco President has no particular jurisdiction over the interpretation and application of these two statutory provisions.
Okay, we're now joined also by Democratic Party legislator James Toe. Good morning, Mr. Toe.
Good morning.
Hi. In terms of yesterday's walkout by the pro-establishment camp, you said there would be consequences. What sort of consequences do you think there will be?
Well, first, may I offer my view on the opinion of Professor Chang?
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I beg to disagree with what Professor Chang said. Well, I would not say the power to determine whether an oath taking has been finished or effectively finished is not the exclusive decision of the President of Legco, not the exclusive decision. But because the oath is taken in the Council, and also it is part of the Council's proceedings. So I would say the government should respect should give the highest respect for the determination of the President in making the decision whether an oath has been finished or not. And if the President, taking into a legal advice, offer another chance for the councillor to take the oath again, I would say the government should at least respect that another chance to be given to the councillor.
Can I say something?
Yeah, Lawrence Moore.
I think that when the decision is made by the Legislative Council President to decide that they have been disqualified, he has made a decision, and which makes him functus officio. That means his duty has been discharged. He cannot go back and revisit his decision. So as a result, the decision to disqualify is final, and it is not subject to be reopening. So as a result, we have to live with that decision, and somebody has to act on that decision. And if the Secretary has decided to take on that decision via the Section 73 route to confirm its validity and to confirm the disqualification of the two members, it is up to the Secretary for Justice.
Albert Chen. Yep.
His point is that it is up to the Legco president to determine whether the oath taking has finished. I think the word "finished" is used by him, but I don't think this is appropriate. The oath taking has finished. The first oath taking has finished, and the Secretary General of Legco has determined that a valid oath has not been taken. So that oath taking is finished. Now the Legco president wants to offer these two members another chance. There will be a second round of oath taking. But I think the government's argument is that when the first round of oath taking has finished, by the operation of law, namely Section 21 of the Oath and Declarations Ordinance, the two Legco members have already been disqualified. They have been disqualified by operation of law. So if it is true that they have been disqualified by operation of law, then they are no longer Legco members. So they would not be entitled to take the oath again. I think that is the government's case, and this view, I think, is a legitimate, at least a reasonably arguable point.
Okay, but there are a couple of strange inconsistencies. One is, of course, that this is not there's precedent for allowing legislators to, in the past, to retake their vows. And also, if you say that if they failed in their vows, then that's the end of the matter, then how do you deal with the legislator who apparently made a mistake by omitting certain words?
Well,
and then you would just say, well, I'm sorry, you've done it wrong. You don't have any other chance. But
well, it is.
The government is not complaining about that person,
yes,
but it's complaining about the other case.
The government can apply its own understanding of Section 21 of the Oath and Declarations Ordinance. In other cases, for example, the Legco member who inadvertently failed to read out two Chinese characters in his first oath taking, the government can legitimately take the view that this is not a case of a refusal or declining to take the oath under Section 21. So each case has to be considered.
Well, that's just applying a rule. You're saying it applies in one case and doesn't apply in another.
No, because the rule applies to different cases in different ways.
No, if you're saying that if you get the oath wrong, then that's it.
No,
you have no other
inadvertently, and every lawyer will recognize that inadvertently failing to read out two Chinese characters is a very different situation from intentionally doing certain things, which is contrary to what the oath says.
So it's the motive of the person is relevant.
No, it's not. The actual behavior.
Yeah, you're saying whether it's inadvertent or whether it's intentional.
The of the oath takers are different.
It's not procedural. You're saying it's a question of whether it's intentional or not.
No, it is a question of the objective behavior of the oath taker. Anyway, that's my own view. I may be wrong, so let the court decide. We'll see how the court decide very soon.
Okay, some more comments from listeners. Bowen, in an email, says, by and large, filibustering is used by the party in a weaker position in the legislature to stop the stronger party, or by the executive branch of government, in the case of Hong Kong, pushing through legislation which the weaker party deems to be against the public interest, but which the weaker party is not able to stop otherwise. Here, those doing the walking out, however, is the majority camp in Legco. Additionally, the president of Legco, as advised by council, is also of the view that the legislators-elect should be allowed to take their oath again. Even the judiciary is on record for saying that the legislators-elect should not be deprived from taking the oath until the issue is finally decided upon by the court upon application for judicial review by the executive branch. All these means that it is much more difficult to justify the filibustering on the present occasion. Pete says, can't they just take the oath in private with the Legco president and witnesses present? Just wondering. That's what Pete says. James Toe, that is a possibility, isn't it? That's suggested also in the newspapers today. I understand that under Section 19 of the Oaths Declaration there is provision for the oath to be taken at other sittings of the council as long as the president of the council is there. Is that a possibility?
It's a sitting.
I'm sorry?
The precondition is a sitting. So there must be a sitting.
There must be a sitting, and that means the full council, does it?
Yes, exactly.
So
they cannot be. The oath cannot be taken in, say, the office of the president. No.
Okay, all right. R in an email says, I keep hearing the words from the pro-establishment no other choice, which came from the Occupy Central and pro-democracy people, which the pro-establishment camp strongly rejected. Yet they're now doing and saying the same thing. Is it right that they should use whatever power they have to punish others because they don't like what they said? The CE is retaliating and the pro-establishment are retaliating because they don't like the views of others. While what the new members did was disrespectful and certainly uncalled for, it is this very effort to control and push and force others to act in a certain way that has caused this problem in the first place. That comes from R. James Toe, could I put the point to you that I put to Tanya in the first part of the programme, that this is... they've asked for it. This is they've deliberately brought upon themselves, these Youngspiration people, by refusing to take the oath properly. They had a chance to do it. They blew that chance, and these are the consequences.
Oh yes, they asked for it because they want to express their political opinion. Although I disagree with what they objectively said, maybe a humiliated words, but I would say they feel that they are expressing a political opinion. If they want to test the limit of the law, then of course they will be at risk of whether they can continue.
Yeah, there are many avenues and venues for people to express their political opinion, but by doing this, when it comes to the swearing of the oath, they exclude themselves from becoming legislators. That's what they do.
I actually asked them in just next to your studio in the Chinese channel just half an hour ago, but their answer is that they feel that their days are numbered. I don't know why Mr. Leung would said that, but they said that their days of being a legislator will be numbered. So that's why they would make use of every opportunity and every second to put forward their political opinion. That's their thinking. So although I don't disagree, I would disagree with them on their wordings, but at least they feel that they must make use of every opportunity to put forward what their voters would hope that they will express of their view.
Okay.
Can I add one more point?
Yes, Mr. Chen, go.
This oath-taking is required by Article 104 of the Basic Law, which applies equally to the chief executive, principal officials, IFCO members, and judges, and so on. So if the oath, if everybody can be given a second chance when the first oath was not duly taken, as in this case, then it will mean that everybody else, even judges or principal officials, can take the oath in a manner which Ms. Yo and Mr. Leung took, and then be given a second chance. We do expect that the law will operate in such a way as to enable even judges and the principal officials to have a second go in taking the oath. I'm sure the law applies equally to all these categories of people. This is stated in both Article 104 and Section 21 of the Oaths and Declarations Ordinance. It doesn't give Legco members a special privilege. If being given a second chance is a special privilege, then it will apply to everybody who takes oath.
Do you see scope for an interpretation, a reinterpretation by the MPC Standing Committee in this case?
I would not comment on the prospect of interpretation, but as you know, under Article 158 of the Basic Law, the Court of Final Appeal does have to refer to the Standing Committee in certain circumstances, and it's up to the court to decide whether the conditions for reference were satisfied, and the court in the Congo case a few years ago did decide that the conditions were satisfied.
Do you see anything in the current case that might justify that?
I don't know the details of the government's argument, because whether a reference is justified depends on whether the issues argued in the case concern the interpretation of a particular basic law provision, and whether the court does need to interpret that provision in deciding the case.
Does it pertain to cross-border relations in any way, or?
Well, it pertains to the oath, which is the article I just mentioned, Article 104.
Can I make a final?
Yeah, go on, Joe. So.
Yeah, well, I think take away the office of an elected councillor is a very serious matter. So to judge whether a councillor has refused or neglected to take the oath in the most formal and proper way, I think you should give at least benefit of doubt to him, and to give him at least a chance, and to tell him that which way he is not making the oath in accordance with the statutory form. That is exactly the advice of the senior counsel given to the president of the council.
Albert Chen?
Just the issue of Article 104, which is that this requirement applies equally to judges and principal officials. So if you are right, if James is right, then principal officials and judges who take the oath in a manner similar to that of Leung and Yao would also be given a second chance.
Just one more thing.
I'm saying that to make a judgment that a principal official has neglected or to refuse to take an oath in a proper form is also a very serious matter. So I should say to make a very subjective judgment is a very dangerous matter.
Professor Chen, just finally, one thing. What about the fact that the Judicial Review is launched, as we've mentioned, in the names of the Chief Executive and the Secretary for Justice? Any significance in that? What do you make of that?
I think the Council for the Government did explain why the CE is involved. That is because under Article 48 of the Basic Law, the CE is responsible for the implementation of the Basic Law and other laws. So I think his view, the government's view, is that this is a matter concerning the implementation of the Basic Law, and under the Basic Law, the government takes the view that these two Legco members have already been disqualified, and that's why the CE is one of the parties in this case to implement the Basic Law.
Okay, and a couple of emails just to finish off. First of all, Michael says, "Dear Backchat, what a surprise. Another own goal by C.Y. Leung. The lack of respect by the CEO in failing to acknowledge the Legco president's decision and implicitly denying the division of powers in the spirit of checks and balances are adding to the feeling that he, C.Y. Leung, is either out of control or following the inept instructions from the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office. My own bet is that the government wants to have the election held again and test the small majority of the young female legislator." Comes from Michael. Doug, though, in an email says, the theatricals of Leung and Yao have played into the hands of the pro-Beijing camp and made them look silly and immature. Hopefully, if they're eventually able to be sworn in, they'll take wiser counsel before taking any more ill-conceived actions. You should bear in mind that they were elected to represent and hopefully improve the lot of their electors, not to go off on ego trips. That's from Doug. Thank you very much indeed for all the comments this morning. And too, I guess, so we heard there from Professor Albert Chen from the Faculty of Law at the University of Hong Kong, James To, legislator with the Democratic Party, and Lawrence Ma, a barrister, chairman of the China-Australia Legal Exchange Foundation.
OK, and for the last few minutes of the programme this morning, we're going to be talking about matters relating to the alleged sexual assault case at a Hong Kong care home for the mentally handicapped. And, social workers and various concerned groups are demanding better government supervision of nursing homes after a former superintendent of a care home for the mentally disabled couldn't be prosecuted for alleged sexual assault of a woman under his care because she was declared unfit to testify. Joining us now on the line is Fernando Cheung, legislator for the Labour Party. Good morning, Mr. Cheung.
Good morning.
So, what can we learn from this unfortunate case?
I think there are three main areas of concern. One is whether there are any room for improvement in the legal procedures and perhaps even in the law and the protection of vulnerable witnesses. In this particular case, the main problem is that the victim cannot present herself in the court to testify because 6 psychiatrists concluded that she was unfit because of the concerns for post-traumatic disorder, and that she could be harmed again if she has to go through the cross-examination by the defense. So there has to be some improvement, and that how vulnerable witnesses can at least be assisted in a better way in having them go through that procedure.
And
we understand that.
Yeah. Do you know how that could be achieved?
We understand that other countries, for example, Australia, has certain practices in limiting the kind of question that could be imposed during the cross-examination, and that is that would be ruled by the court prior to the trial period. And I think that could be one area that we should explore in helping vulnerable witnesses to go through these cross-examination, especially those who are in sexual assault cases, plus that they are intellectually disabled or vulnerable in other aspects. Mm-hmm. The other area of concern is the licensing and the monitoring of these privately run care homes. How could someone who's been accused of sexual assault or indecent assault back about 10 years ago twice, although acquitted, continue to be the superintendent and also the owner of this private care home? And that during the incident, it was reviewed that the superintendent was in the whole floor with only female residents and no other staff on site. These type of arrangement is acceptable in our license requirement. And what is the Social Welfare Department's role in monitoring these homes? We need to look into the areas of improvement also.
I think we should, sorry to interrupt, but we should just quickly add at this point that the superintendent concerned has denied the latest allegation against him. If somebody's accused of something years back and they're acquitted by a court, should that disqualify them from remaining in the same industry?
Well, I think we should assume people are innocent until they're proven guilty. Mm-hmm. But in the work of taking care of the most vulnerable, people who cannot protect themselves or people who couldn't even communicate and express themselves, then we need to be a bit more stringent. So we need to look into ways to put a bit more screening in this. Although, yes, I would agree that people who are acquitted should be considered entirely innocent. But this person has a number of incidents before this. And I think there has to be some sort of an alert system to prevent this from happening again. Okay,
fine. And sorry, you're going to make a third point?
Well, it has to be also the control of personnel involved in the caring work. And this person also had some incidents prior to this institution. He was an instructor in swimming for a school for the blind students. And there were some incidents there before. And so we have to come up with a better control for personnel or people who are involved in taking care of the most vulnerable people. This particular situation has to call for some major revamp in all three areas that I just mentioned.
Is anyone acting on that? Is there anyone putting pressure for that to happen?
Well, a few legislators. I've been working with Siu Ka-chun, who is the social welfare sector representative, also Alvin Yeung and Dennis Kwok, both barristers themselves, and of course my colleague in Legislative Council. We are all working on it, and I'm forming an alliance and looking into rooms for improvement in the law and the legal proceedings.
Okay, Labour Party legislator Fernando Cheung, thanks very much for speaking to us this morning. That's about it from Backchat. Thanks to all our listeners and thank you to all our guests. Just before we go, a quick look at the weather. There are going to be sunny periods today, but the weather's going to deteriorate because the outlook is for frequent heavy rain with squalls tomorrow. Seas will be rough with swells, and rain will ease off later on Saturday. At the moment, the standby signal number 1 is in effect. The current temperature is 26 degrees and the humidity 89%.
The government has been striving to improve Hong Kong's transport network. Railways will be extended to Ho Man Tin